All right, guys, we're live here. Welcome to Trinitarian Ministry. We're going to go ahead and today we're going to have a pastoral interview with a good friend of mine and former pastor and lead evangelist for his particular church. And also just some of the pitfalls that come with ministry work. As we've talked about before in the past, I think one of the major pitfalls you find with ministry work is we treat it like a dream job instead of a job. And we treat it as if there is no end in sight. And we kind of just walk right into it. I shared with you guys many times that for whatever reason, God has used me to help young men come into the ministry. And I've heard it multiple times. But one of the things that drives me crazy personally is when I ask, hey, brother, how's it going? How's it been in the ministry? How you feeling? And you hear things like, bro, I woke up at 10 a.m. this morning. I had a 2-hour quiet time. It was awesome. Do much else after that, but man, oh man, am I feeling fed. In my mind, immediately, I start to shut down and say, man, I failed with this, brother. That was not the goal. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in Josh, and we're going to talk not just about his ministry experience, but how he got into the ministry. Did he run into pitfalls? Did he run into snares? Did he find out that although it is a beautiful and amazing experience, sometimes it can go against our expectations? And, kind of see the fallout from some of these things, the reality of ministry life, and the reality of what it looks like after ministry life. Because I don't think this is ever talked about. And we never certainly don't warn people when they come into the ministry that this may not be forever. This may not be your forever job. Now, other jobs, they don't have to do that. With the ministry, I think it'd be wise for us to begin to explain these things. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in Josh and introduce Joshua Christensen to the world here with Trinitarian and Double Edge Freedom.
Hello.
Hey, Joshua, how are you, sir?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Alex.
It's good to see you with your Princess Leia earphones. I like those.
That? Get the buns on for you, man.
I love it, to be honest with you.
Of course.
Josh, let me jump in, man. I want to ask this question because I think this is because we all start off in something has to trigger, something has to inspire. For you, what was the inspiration to even want and have that desire to get into the ministry, whether full-time or just serving?
That's a great question. So 28 years ago, I was a wee lad, about yay big, and just kind of getting started in life. I'm 18, 19 years old. I had pretty much given up on church. Didn't want anything to do with it. I had my own faith, but just leave me alone. And I met a guy that I sat down and studied the Bible with over in Dallas. And over the course of 2 weeks, we got together every single day, and he answered all my questions from Scripture. He didn't give me a bunch of conjecture, a bunch of doctrine or anything like that. We just kept flipping through the Bible and looking at things. And he taught me who Jesus was for the first time in my life. And I've been going to church most of my life. So during that experience, I used to sit in the back of the auditorium and I would watch the lead evangelist of that church. You and I have talked about him quite a bit. I'm not going to mention any names, but the lead evangelist of
Nick Young. I do it. I love it.
You can do it. I'm not doing it. But yeah, Nick was a phenomenal, very, very gifted speaker. And one of the things that when I was baptized that I realized is that you don't enter into ministry as a profession. You enter into ministry by choice of following Jesus. And so from the day that I was baptized, I've always believed that I've been in ministry because it's Christ's ministry and I'm involved in that. But I had this idea and I had this passion that I wanted to do what Nick Young was doing. And I wanted to be able to teach people who Christ was on a larger scale. And so I was 18, 19 years old. Fast forward, the opportunities did not present themselves. I was told on multiple occasions I wasn't good enough. I wasn't man enough. No, you're not the right guy. No, the ministry is not what you think it is. I mean, you name it. And it was, I got this barrage. So here I am many, many, many years later, and I've got a 20-year career in banking, mortgages, and real estate. Mm-hmm. And in 2016, I was given an opportunity to basically I was given a full ride scholarship to go into ministry training and go into a seminary school out in California. So I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico with you. And so that opportunity presented itself. And so we took the call and we sold 75% of our belongings, and we packed up and we funded our move to California, and we proceeded to go broke in California while I was going through school. And 2017 was a year of many, many, many financial problems and lots of challenges. But I was convinced on what I was doing, and I knew that we would be able to kind of dig our way out because we were following the path that I really felt like God put us on. And then, of course, well, I'll kind of leave it there. That's kind of how I got into the full-time ministry.
Well, let me get the dates right. So you and Nick Young, that's when you're, like you said, a lad. I mean, that's what year was
93. That was in
1993.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the year Predator album came out from Ice Cube. That's how I remember that year. So 1993.
Yeah.
Alex Mokadam is a sophomore in high school, and you're dreaming about the ministry.
Dude, I was wearing parachute pants and I'm watching cartoons of Bel Air and Doogie Howser, Come on.
And I'm listening to unsolicited gangster rap, thinking I understand the struggle.
91, man. 91 is when they came out with a little parental advisory thing. I was working at the music store when it happened. Big deal. So, little flashback.
That's a little bit of history there. So, 93, and then you don't have that opportunity. Like you said, you wanted that opportunity.
For years.
It never presented itself. I remember, from my own personal experience, it was very shocking to me to hear you explain these things to me when people would say these things to you. Because I think that there's two different perspectives you can take. As a friend, a person that was being reached out to by you as a young man, I just assumed this guy's in the ministry. I just naturally assumed that. And I think that comes back to your conviction that you shared, is that when you become a Christian, when you become a follower of Jesus, you enter the ministry. And I just assumed that you were a minister. I thought that. And so when we got to know each other and you would tell me, we get a little closer and the trust was built, so all of you know, Josh was one of the gentlemen I asked to stand on my own wedding. And as we get to know each other, and I would hear these things about not being good enough or, X, Y, and Z. I just remember thinking to myself, well, what does that mean for me? I ain't got a shot.
I was told I wasn't man enough to marry my wife. So, I mean, I was told that on many different fronts in my life. And in looking back, retrospect, I probably wasn't. At the time, it really hurt.
Yeah. I could accept things later. No, and so we're talking about years and decades going by, and then the dream, it kind of gets realized, but not in the way that you wanted, because this dream required you to sell your business. And by the way, just so you guys know, Josh was a very successful businessman here in town, but to sell that, to start over, and not start over in another business that you're comfortable with, but to start over in every sense of the word. What age were you when you guys moved to Los Angeles?
Let's see, 40. I had just turned 43.
See, and I've never heard of that. Usually this idea of the kingdom dream, that's for 18-year-olds. That. And here we are.
It was hard, man. We sat down and we talked. I sat down and had a devotional with my kids. Belinda and I made the decision. We prayed about it a lot for a couple weeks. And the night that we finally made the decision, we sat down with the kids and I had a little devotional with them. And I shared with them about Jesus saying that anybody who's not willing to give up everything is, for his sake, can't call themselves his disciple. And they're like, okay, Dad, that's great. And I said, and that's why we're getting rid of our mansion on the hill, and that's why we're closing down the business, and in 30 days we're going to be moving to California. And my kids were both in high school, and my oldest was going to be a senior in high school. And it was in retrospect, looking back, I didn't realize how much damage that would actually do at that stage in her life. And so even though the call came for me, my kids kind of came along by proxy, not by their own choice. And so there were a lot of challenges that the decision actually created for us, financial, within our family, all kinds of things that happened that we had to kind of work through a lot.
So describe your time in Los Angeles. You're in Los Angeles. Did you have a place to move in? Did you, how's that work? You know what I mean? That's
no. I was
because in my mind, I'm like, surely Josh has a plan, and I know he has a place.
Man, yeah, I had just enough money to get me to California. I'd been trying to line up a place to live. We've been trying to get all kinds of things going, and the guy who was going to be mentoring me, as we were driving there, I'm on the phone with him going, dude, have you found me a place to go to? Because I haven't. He goes, well, just come to my house. And we ended up living in his house. We kicked his 14-year-old out of his bedroom, and all four of us lived in a 10 by 10 bedroom for 2.5 weeks until we found an apartment. It was uncomfortable, to say the least. So no, I didn't have a job, and I didn't have a place to live. We just went on blind faith. And
so you're in Los Angeles. You're beginning the training.
Yeah.
If your experience in Los Angeles is anything like what I recognized in Las Cruces, New Mexico, I'm sure that you were beginning to impress upon people, I have conviction. I'm ready for this. I've given up everything. It's my time. What happens? How's the training work? What's that all about? Were you guaranteed a position in ministry, or?
No, I wasn't guaranteed a position at all. It was come on out here, start training, and we'll kind of see how it goes, and we'll see if you're fit for it. There was no guarantee. It was all on faith. So I talked to when I finally got my job, I talked to my employer, and I basically funded my own way into the ministry. And I showed up at anything that the leadership was doing, I was at.
Yeah.
If I could be part of it, I was there. It was really hard going through the seminary because I was there with like 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kids, half my age. And so one of the first things that we did when we got there, everybody went around and we all got nicknames. And I became Big Papa J.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I was just, what's up, Big Papa J? And I mean, it was like, oh my gosh. So everybody was coming to me, and all these kids are like talking to me about my kids, and they're like, oh, I'm getting married. What's it like having kids? And I'm going, oh my gosh, these are my peers.
Yeah.
What have I done? It was a really, really challenging time because I had a real hard time finding my place.
Sure, man.
And all these guys are running off in multiple directions, doing all kinds of things. And I'm like, yeah, I got to get back to the family, and I got a job that I got to get to in the morning because I'm still supporting my family, and which I wasn't, even though I was working. It was challenging time. So yeah, it was 15 months of adrenaline, fear, anxiety. It was a pace that a man of my age and at my point in life should not have been trying to take on. And the only thing that kept me going was my faith.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah. Let's make no mistake about this. Yeah, you're right. Adrenaline for sure. Fear of failure, absolutely. I can see all that.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
there's no denying that you have to have faith during that time. You would have crumbled. There's just no way. So here's the deal, though. So your faith actually makes it through the initial trials. Your faith actually gets you into the seminary, and you get to somehow you work. I mean, it seems obvious to me that God had a plan in mind and was still watching over you and your family when you had an opportunity to come back home to Albuquerque. And the church was going to help fund for that because somewhere along the line, they had a vision for you to become a pastor here and lead the church in Albuquerque. Is that right?
Yeah, so we actually came back here, and we brought 13 people with us, and we planted a new church here in Albuquerque back in January of 2018.
That's right.
Yeah, that was quite an experience. I had people move in from the Pacific Northwest, from 3 different areas of Los Angeles, and from Phoenix, all came back here, and there was only on the group of people that came, there was only one person on the team that actually had ever been to Albuquerque, and besides my family, right?
Right.
And so it was man, it was challenging. And after 20 plus years of doing ministry work, not on a paid status, but just volunteer layperson ministry in all over New Mexico. I mean, from the southern points up to Albuquerque. It's I have a very good feel for the culture and for the people. And then of course my wife is from Southeast Albuquerque, or Southeast New Mexico. I got a feel for the southeastern part of the state. I mean, I've got a really good feel for the culture in the state. And we ran into a lot of problems as I was talking with my bosses back in California, because they wanted me to do things the California way, which I kind of laughed and I said, what you don't understand is that a very large percentage of our population in New Mexico are transplants from California who don't want to do things the California way.
Very true.
And they
to the choir.
California, that's why they came to New Mexico, because the culture here is very different and the dynamic is very different. And I can't do the things the way, I can't run the ministry the same way that they run it in LA. The mechanics aren't the same. We have the same faith, but the mechanics are different.
And I can say that from the outside looking in, it can be masked very well, because I went to the inaugural service, and brother, what a service it was. I was pumped. I had told myself that I wasn't going to get pumped. I was not going to get encouraged and excited. But I tell you, when it comes to ministry life, the highs can mask the lows so well that you forget how far you have fallen at times. It doesn't hurt as bad, because you know the next high. You're just hoping for the next high to come around. But that service had me ready to sign up. I had to walk out of there and pray and be wise about the situation. I was like,
okay, this is the first. You never told me that. Dagnabbit.
Yeah. Well, I was jealous of the knife, if I'm being honest. I said, I got.
Well, there's that.
No, but I mean, that's a great point, though, is that you went through, incredible trials. But to get back home with a mission team around you, and the sermon that you preached that day, and the singing, the energy, I'm telling you, it can mask all the pain, and it can make you you just want to believe that it's going to be like this all the time.
Yeah.
So now we know, because I wouldn't be having this interview with you if you're in the same spot. Now we know things didn't go that way. It wasn't like that all the time. You're getting trouble from LA. They didn't necessarily understand our culture out here. You're definitely preaching to the choir when you say people move from San Diego from California because they don't want that lifestyle. I know that to be true. I'm from San Diego myself, and I loved being in Las Cruces, and then coming up here. This is home.
Right.
So walk us through that. So you're coming towards an end here. Things aren't going well. There's friction. How's that work between you and the leadership? How did things come to an end, I suppose?
Very abruptly, actually. I was blindsided by it, honestly. I was asked to, in April that same year, we've been out here for about 3.5 months, 4 months. We were asked to come back out to California for a meeting. We came out for one of their staff meetings out there. And after the staff meeting, they took us out to lunch and sat down and said that they had some ideas about the way they asked us how things were going, how we saw the trajectory of the church, were we studying the Bible with people, just all the nuances of ministry life, right? And they then told me, okay, great. Well, we don't see the trajectory in the same way that you do. And so we're going to go ahead and send somebody else to Albuquerque to go ahead and lead the church. And we'd like to welcome you to come on back out here for more training. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. Man, I'm not a 19-year-old kid. And I thought, man, this So, and my wife was sitting with me at the time, and her heart sank.
I can only imagine.
She thought for sure that I was gonna move us again. And so I said, well, we're gonna have to talk about this, and we're gonna have to pray a lot. And they said, well, if you guys want to move over to Phoenix, there's a couple there that can work with training you. Or you can move to any of the cities that we've got other churches that, we could get you some training and stuff. And I thought, man. So we came back on the way to the airport. I don't think we even made it to the airport when we were sitting there. I think we sat at the airport for about 4 or 5 hours, but I don't think we were even at the airport yet when sitting there at LAX when I looked at Belinda and I said, we're not moving again. And she just looked at me. She said, are you serious? I said, absolutely. I said, I'm not moving. We're not leaving New Mexico again. This is home. This is man-made. This isn't from God. And I don't support this. I'm not a part of it. And it wasn't about my own passion or my own dream, because I'd already made the decision that we were probably only going to be in the full-time ministry for 2, maybe 3 years. And at the point that they asked us to move somewhere else, I was already resolved and resigned to turn it over to somebody else, because my goal was never to be in a pastoral career. It was to bring a passion-filled church of Jesus loving disciples back to Albuquerque, and back to New Mexico that we had lost somewhere along the way. And so I felt like, okay, no, my role is to lay the foundation and then step back and let somebody else take it. And that was cut short. But I already knew. I was like, if they ask me to move, I'm not moving anywhere. We're done.
Yeah.
So it was I went ahead about a week later, after Belinda and I prayed about it, talked about it and stuff. I went ahead and I offered them my resignation. So, and then I stayed on through the end of July, through the transition, and and I allowed the new pastor to come in, and and that was an unbelievably awkward and painful time. So
I super appreciate you sharing this again. I know that's not easy. Let me try. I'm going to try and summarize here a little bit. So you have a dream, and it actually comes to fruition 24 years later. And then after the 24-year journey in the desert, you get hey, this is what I've always wanted, and it comes, and then a year later, it's done. And you have not only to help the next couple come in, which is incredibly mature and incredibly difficult. That takes not just faith, but a ton of humility. Also, now you're left with, and let me just, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you have essentially, you're starting over once again. You have about, I don't know, a month, 2 months of pay at a minister salary, but you're trying to rebuild everything that you had already given up. Walk me through that process, because you had stopped. You gave up that career to pursue a ministry dream. The dream seems to have fizzled out because, like you said, and I think that's well put, it was man-made. When that dream fizzles out, now you're stuck. Now you're at this point like, okay, now I have to rebuild everything all over again. Please, tell me a little bit about that, because that is real.
So the great state of New Mexico offered me a fantastic unemployment package.
Sorry.
So that kind of helped me about this much, get us through about a 6-month period, and while I had to reactivate my real estate license, because that had gone dormant while we were gone, which ironically, I was already in the process of starting prior to this, because I was going to sell real estate to pay off my debt. I was going to sell some real estate on the side to pay off some debt, and also to help raise money to fund the mission. Because in a small church with 13 people that are all like 10 years old, nobody's contributing to anything, and there's bills to be paid. So I was like, okay, well, I'll sell some real estate and use a lot of that cash to help fund us until we really build that foundation. So I mean, I was all in. I was going to use my business skills to do that. And the difference, though, this time around, when I started in real estate, 10 years ago or whatever, I was amped up and excited about it, and my ministry dreams were already on the back burner.
Yeah.
And I always thought, well, okay, my job is going to be to make money and help support ministry, not necessarily to be the full-time minister. And so when this whole thing came about, I had to change gears, and it scared the heck out of me because I'd given up on that.
Yeah. Yep.
And so coming back now and starting real estate again, it was starting from a position of failure. Not so much a failure in real estate, but from a position of failure in the dream God put on my heart. And so I spent the first 6 months back in real estate fumbling around in a pretty deep depression. And I didn't realize I was in a depression. I just kind of sat in front of my computer and I thumbed through and talked to a couple people here and there, but I wasn't working. And I was in a pretty bad place, emotionally. And it was very, somehow trying to keep it together for my family.
Yeah.
It was very hard. It was very
That's
hard.
the impression I got. So those of you who don't know, like I said before in the beginning, Josh and I go back quite some time, and that's the impression I got from you is I said, this brother's doing everything he can to keep a smile on his children's face. And
yeah, that didn't work out so well every day.
The effort. It wasn't from a lack of trying, my brother. That was huge. Explain to me, because I know the answer to this question, but what was one of your first jobs coming back into just non-ministry life? From what I remember, there was the unemployment. Thank God for that at times. But was that before or after? I can't remember when you. I know for a fact.
I just got my real estate license and started selling real estate again.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Well, let me ask you a question.
I started real estate, and then at the beginning of 2019, I snapped out of it. Right at the end of 18, and then beginning of 19, I realized I was in a depression. Got to talking with a good friend of mine, and we formed an LLC at the beginning of 2019, and he actually was very generous and funded some projects.
Uh-oh. I think I may have lost Josh here. Hopefully he comes on the screen. Oh, there you are.
There we are.
I lost you for a second.
Yeah,
okay,
so
good. Well, let me.
We got back in. We started flipping some houses, and it kind of reinvigorated my spirit a little bit. And I got back to working, started selling a few more houses, and now at the beginning of 2020, we set up a property management company. So now we've got 3 companies that I'm running, and we're working on doing some stuff it's exciting. I started doing some podcasts on faith-based investing and realized that I can use my business skills to help work with people in the Christian community and teach Christians how to walk with Christ in the business world, because we walk in a very corrupt world. So it's what I know. I got to support my family and do that, but at the same time, it's like my ministry is it's really just who I am, and it's like I'm starting to kind of come out of it again. But at the same time, that I think one of the things that I wrestled with, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but one of the big challenges that I had, and I'm still having, I'm kind of still in the midst of it, is I didn't lose my faith in God, because I know that man fell a long time ago and Jesus came to redeem us, but we are still of a fallen state and of that human nature. We all suffer from the human condition. And so sin is abound in the church, out of the church, everywhere. And the only thing that we have is Christ. And we've got the blood of Christ to atone for us. And without that, we're nothing. So my faith didn't really suffer so much in that regard. But what I think what I lost, and that I think I'm wrestling to regain, is that I lost my faith in my role, and in my purpose, and knowing what is my role supposed to be, and how do I function in this space and time, because it was very different prior to going into full-time ministry. When I went into full-time ministry, I went all in. I mean, it was like I left, and there was no question about it. I was going into full-time ministry. And so when I came out, it was like everything about me had died.
Yeah. Now what?
And I had to figure out how to come back to life again and reconcile this, and figuring out what that role and how I function and how I show up, very, very different. And it's been a challenging 2.5 year process.
And there's two things that you said that really struck me. One is that your ministry is you. I think that's profound. I could chew on that for some time because I believe that about myself. Another thing that I think people should recognize, we got to at least address this. I've known at least 3 pastors who have lost their title. And when they did so, they remained at the congregation and remained within the fellowship for some time. But it was an uncomfortable time. You saw just a defeated spirit, just a defeat. So how do you get through that? And it sounds like that's not something that you have an answer to right now. But even finding your place, like, what do I do? How do I respond to people? How do I act? How do I do? What am I supposed to do anymore? And it's almost like starting over, even in your Christian walk. It's like, okay, I'm in the house of God. I'm here to praise. I'm here to worship. It's difficult. It's easy when you're younger. It's difficult when you know that, hey, am I supposed to be up there? Did I miss my calling? Or am I supposed to be right here? You know what I mean? These are difficult things that I do not think anyone necessarily even touches on, because we don't think of the ministry like that.
You know, here's something I've held on to for a long time, and it was years and years ago, probably 2008. I left the ministry and the fellowship that you and I met in years ago, and that I kind of grew up in my faith.
Yep.
I left that fellowship, and I had to wrestle with this idea of, am I leaving God or am I leaving the church?
Thank you.
And one of the things that I really discovered during that time was that Jesus is the Lord of my life, not the church. And I was baptized as a disciple of Jesus Christ, not as the church, but somewhere along the way, I became a disciple of the church, and the church actually became my God.
Yeah.
So coming out of this time, having that Jesus is my king and not the church and no man, it has been a process of knowing that if Jesus said that I'm supposed to help people, then I'm supposed to help people. If he said I'm supposed to serve someone,
you better serve.
Then I'm supposed to be serving people. Now, one of the challenges that I've had, and I shared this with you yesterday, one of the challenges in the last 2 years that I've had is that I have not wanted to be around people, because it was people who hurt me.
That hurt you. Yeah.
So reconciling that my king is still asking me to serve people, and yet not wanting to go touch the lepers and wanting to withdraw, has been so incredible. That's been a real emotional struggle, because that's part of my human condition.
Yeah.
Last summer, I had the opportunity to go on a mission trip with the church that we've been worshiping with, and we went down to Chihuahua, Mexico for a week, and they asked me to preach. Oh my gosh, that was excruciating. And they kept calling me pastor, and it was so excruciatingly painful on the inside. And so I shared about Elijah after Mount Carmel, after he had just destroyed and obliterated 100 of the greatest prophets of Baal, and he took them all out with a sword. And the next day finds out Jezebel's going to kill him, so he runs for his life and he lays down in the desert to kill himself.
Yep.
God, please take my life. I'm over. It's over. He had this incredible victory, and God gets him up, feeds him, says, no, your journey's not over. He sends him on his way, and he ends up in the cave where he's still resting, and then he starts hearing these whispers.
Yeah.
Elijah, what are you doing here? Elijah, what are you doing here? Elijah, he goes out, he sees the earthquakes, the floods, the rain, the wind, the fires, and all the destruction of the world. But he sees that God isn't in any of that. And he keeps hearing that whisper, Elijah, what are you doing here? And so that was a sermon that I preached in Chihuahua, Mexico last year, 3 times to 3 different groups. And I shared with them that is the message that God's been telling me. Josh, what are you doing here? It's not in the songs. It's not in the majesty of the fantastic inaugural service. It's not in the building that you worship in. It's not in any of that stuff. But what are you doing here? Am I still your king? Am I still the one that you're following? Where's your loyalty lie? And I've been wrestling with that for the last year when he gave that to me last summer. So it's been pretty amazing.
Amazing story. Well, I have one final question, man, and you tell me if I'm going too far. That's fine with me. I want to ask a little bit about, because I don't think people see this coming. I think when I talk about church hurts, and I've been doing a lot of counseling this summer, and I don't think that's going to stop. There's enough damage out there for all of us to work. But yeah, but I think that this gets overlooked, and I don't think we see this coming. Okay, let me share briefly. I myself, and you can testify to this, whether you agree or not. I myself, I've always thought that I was a pretty popular guy at church. I always thought that like people like to be around me, and I like to be around people, so it's a good combination. It seems to work. When things got rough for Bonnie and I was actually asked to leave. You got to leave. I was like, we tried it, didn't work out, son. So I was asked to leave. I remember thinking that not much was going to change. Like that was my mindset, because I have my friends. God sets the lonely in families, and I know he put me in a family. I believe that 100%. But when I was no longer a part of that fellowship, brother, I was dead to everybody. And I couldn't have seen that coming. I just could never have imagined that. That was the most heartbreaking thing in the world, because I always considered our fellowship one of love, one that we're trying to bring people in. I want people to feel like they are in a family when they're around me. When we left, you find out very quickly you really only had a very few friends. The people you called family, some of them were cousins. They weren't brothers and sisters. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, maybe, yeah, even twice removed on your.
That family tree that did not fork.
So I do want to open that up for you. I don't know how it was necessarily in your experience. I know I never lost contact with you, and I've always enjoyed our friendship. But at the same time, you went through something similar where you're part of this ministry. This is where your kingdom dream happened. This is where you began to serve. This is even where you learned about ministry, all those functions. You've led many Bible talks, many different ministries. Now that's kind of come to a close here in that sense. But what happened with the friendships? And I think that's just something we all need to talk about and be real about.
Yeah, it's hard. When we left the fellowship that you and I were part of, we were ostracized. A lot of things were said about us behind our back, things that weren't true, things, very hurtful things from people who even 2 weeks before that told us how much they loved us. And that was very painful. And we worked through a lot of stuff. Over 3 years, we went to 11 different churches before we finally found a place to settle in. And we started rebuilding. And in 2016, when we left for California, we'd been at this other fellowship for about 5 years. And upon the move to California, all these people who said how much they loved us, how much they appreciated us and everything, right after we left, they started holding church-wide services and lessons about how we had been planted within the church and how we were there to try to pull people away from their church and to brainwash them into some kind of a cult and to not have anything to do with us. And so when we came back from California, all of our friends that we were very close with wouldn't have much to do with us, looked at us like we had a third eye. And then 4 months later, that whole cycle started over. And we find ourselves in a position now where our pool of friends has dwindled yet again. And it's a very painful thing when we're called to be in community with other like-minded believers, yet all the people that we have been like-minded with over the years don't want anything to do with us. And so it's been very, very painful. And that's part of, I think, what I go back to, not really wanting to kind of be around people and having a hard time serving people, because it's like, do I really want to open myself up to that again?
That's real. That, Joshua, man, I super appreciate you saying these things, because that's about as real as it gets, man. When the friends leave and the family runs on you, all I could say is I felt abandoned. I'm listening to you now, and even as I listen to you, I'm very uncomfortable, because I recall, and I guarantee there's people that are listening to us right now. They remember. You don't have to be a pastor to feel that. You don't have to be, you really don't. You have to be a part of a family and then feel like you're not a part of that family. And family doesn't work that way.
I'll tell you something I learned a long time ago. If you want to find out who your friends are, host a moving party. Right. So here I'll kind of finish out with this. All right. So I'm gonna tie this all together. All right. So in 2000, I moved from Las Cruces to Dallas to do some training. And when I came back in 2001, you were living there. You moved in about a week or so after I got there. I think you moved in. And when we sold that house, you were there to help me move to
the palace,
a new house in Las Cruces. And when we moved from Las Cruces to Albuquerque, when everybody in Las Cruces thought we were out of our mind and we were running from a lot of the problems that we were facing in Las Cruces, you were there helping load the truck. In fact, you loaded up your car with your family with all the extra stuff we couldn't get on the truck. You drove up here with us. And we moved to our house here in Albuquerque, the first house we had. I think you have helped me move almost every time I've moved in the last 20 years. So, from Hell or High Water, we're in different cities, and you're still there. When I moved to California, you helped load my truck, and when I got back and we moved out of the apartment, you helped me move me out of my apartment to move into the house I'm in now. Alex, I think in the last 20 years, you've probably been one of the truest friends through thick and thin. And there's our brother Rocky. Now, nobody listening to this has any idea who Rocky is. But we know Rocky. We love Rocky. And Rocky had this thing where he would always say, "Mi carnal." And my Persian Jewish brother, in my best Northern European Spanish accent, you are mi carnal.
Amen, my brother. Well, let me share some things before we close out. You've been through hell, and I'm telling you, even though you're feeling the resistance you have, there's just, Josh, even when you don't want to, you're helping people. That's just the way you are. That's just the way God has designed you. And it'll be that way I think God has got infinite patience with you because he knows who you are. And when this tidal wave of emotion begins to calm down, you'll be back doing exactly what you always have done, but with all new tools, because that's what I've always seen. And it's always inspired me by the way that you live your life. You can start over. You're not afraid. You've seen things. You've done things. People talk about things. You have done things. And I think this separates you, my brother. And I'm super grateful that you were the first interview that we had here. And I look forward to it's just more of the business side of things and learning from you. And in case you didn't know, this brother has also authored a book called Consider the Ant. I've read it twice. I love it. I've used those principles to lower my credit card debt by the snowball principle. I mean, I've used all these ideas, and they come from the book of Proverbs. And brother, again, man, thank you so much for this time. And I got to get a new camera. I'm looking at your side of the screen. I'm looking at mine. Amen. All right.
Let me give you a closing thought.
You got it, please.
While I was in California, while I was going through ministry training and doing my seminary, they kept asking us over and over and over. Every time we turned around, what's your kingdom dream? What's your kingdom dream? What is it that you want to do for God? And I would venture to say that a lot of your listeners and a lot of the people that are watching this, you probably have similar things. What do I want to do for God? What mark do I want to make on this life? Let me tell you one thing. When we die and they put that birthstone or that death stone or whatever it is, and it says, rest in peace, here lies this great man, whatever, it's going to start with a beginning date and an end date. And right in the middle is this dash. And right now we're in the middle of a dash. The dash is our life. It's our defining points. And my kingdom dream, the only thing that I want in my life, and I will take this to my grave, is I want to hear him say, well done, good and faithful servant. That's my kingdom dream. That's it. So I hope that's an encouragement to you guys. I know that there's probably a lot of you out there that are hurting in some way. If there's any way that I can be of service or I can help you, if you need somebody to talk to, get in touch with Alex and he'll put us in touch. I mean, I have no problem sharing and helping because, you know, the reality of it is that we live in a fallen, dark world where people hurt each other a lot. And the only thing we have is the grace of God. So I want to hear him say, well done, good and faithful servant. Alex, I love you, man.
Love you, man. I know I didn't cry, so thank you for running my podcast.
Dude,
all right.
You gotta put that HEPA filter, man. You're getting some dust in there.
I'm going to take you off camera here for a second and close out. Thank you again,
Love
Josh.
you,
Love you, brother. All right, guys. Well, hey, I super hope you enjoyed the humility, the passion of this man, and the way that he shared. And this is what we're trying to bring to you is I want to bring you a sense of reality so that you can match your dreams with just the ins and outs, the actual functioning of ministry life. And don't give up on those dreams. God has those. He's put those on your heart and your mind for a reason, but just temper them with wisdom, temper them with life experience. God will allow you to experience certain things, and it is, of course, to train you. It is for your betterment, and it is to bring you into his glory. Guys, to God be the glory. I love you to death. We'll see you next time.